I can share my screen.
Thank you so much, Stella. Over to you.
Okay. Hi everybody. Let me just click. There's so many things going on. I like sharing my PDF because with PowerPoint on presentation mode, I cannot see you guys and I cannot see the chat easily. So if everybody's okay, it's a PDF file that I'm talking through, and you will have access to my file after the presentation is over. So don't worry. So this is really, I mean, I was just chatting before the session start. One thing I really love about MYFest, it's really a community building event. So I like to share things that I've been thinking about. It's work in progress, nothing is set in stone. Again, today it's very much in that spirit that I wanted to talk and share with you. So the topic today I like to talk about is AI ethics, and I call it for learning professionals because I actually wanted to get some feedback on that as well. It's it's that I work in both spaces in higher education or more formal educational space, but I also work in workplace learning with government, with nonprofits, with public sectors. So I don't even want to know, I don't even know what would be a good um, catch-all phrase for people that are in the learning and educational field. So you guys can tell me if that's representational or not. So just to get started, and small crowd here, so feel free to just chime in. It's very informal, so feel free to unmute yourself. Feel free to type in the chat, and it's very much a conversation. So the impetus of me thinking more about AI ethics is because 2 years ago, I was tasked to build an AI workshop for educators. This is through European Innovation in Technology, EIT. So in putting together a workshop for AI, I thought about, putting together, in addition to how to use tools, what kind of tools are out there for educators to use. I developed a framework called the AI Literacy Framework, and it includes 8 different areas of focus. And so, oh, thanks, John. Yeah, thanks for the feedback about learning professionals. Yeah, thank you. Okay, that's good to know. And so, in this framework, I try to think about like what are, all the foundational building areas that we need to know about AI and not just stuck on what kind of tools are out there, what are the techniques, what are different ways of using AI, but also to think about, in terms of pedagogy, in terms of how do we make better use of data, in terms of understanding the impacts in society and the future of work. And one area that people consistently come back and ask me for more information, it's ethics. And also, it's a little bit disturbing to me, at least at the time. I think maybe ethics is more of an everyday topic now, but 2 years ago, people would always say, oh, I never thought about ethics, or it's something as an afterthought, which it shouldn't be. And the other comments I keep getting is, well, yeah, we know about it, but we don't know how to act on it. Like, what can we do? And so I wanted to approach ethics from a more practical, more pragmatic perspective, and hence the need to kind of develop this rubric or this framework, that, if you will. So before that, I just want to ask you questions. Like in your current workplace, how do you describe what's your organization or even like your team or your own capability in terms of making ethical decisions around AI use? Just feel free to type in the chat or just shout it out. I just want to kind of get a pulse check of where things are at with you guys. It doesn't even have to be your own organization. Maybe it's just based on what you observe out there as well.
Well, I'll mention in my university, after lots of meetings, there's finally a page that has recommendations. There's some recommendations that are global, like, be clear with your students about your policy, but there's no like recommended policy per se. There's more like a group of paragraphs you can copy paste into your syllabus. So ethical guidelines are available as a sort of menu for faculty, but there isn't it's up kind of to the individual teacher to decide how to approach ethics in their classroom.
Okay, yeah, that seems to be on par with my observations as well. And George said, I can speak for my campus, but my observation as faculty is that staff admin are at number 2. Just no campus-wide policy, just one paragraph about academic integrity. So I think a lot of times it's also folded into the broader conversation on academic integrity. So are faculty and staff being asked directly for input as well? Are there a consultation process there? I don't know if that's even a common practice now. What other observations? What other okay, basically my uni is the same as George. Anybody else have or even personally, did you have a systematic way of, approaching ethical issues when you're in your work? Did you have any methodologies to share or any practices that you follow? No?
I mean, in my university, there's some sort of encouragement of maybe including like an AI statement, maybe like an AI checklist, or like obviously just encouraging transparency more with students, open communication. But again, it's always, it's up to the professor's, choice to support or promote AI in the first place or not. And it's still very hard to influence or not influence, but to try to show many of faculty like the benefits of it, because most of the time it's still always like the focus is how it destroys the academic integrity, or like hinders the capacity to detect any. So it's tough. It's really tough.
Okay. So I think that's on par with my observation in general. And it's not just at university. I also see it at government that I work with. And then Nora said, personally believe that it has to be made clear whether or not it is permitted and stating clearly exactly how and to what extent students can use it for a particular assignment. Yeah. And so I also want to look at ethics. I know sometimes it's not within our control, but also look at it, outside your individual settings, right? Outside the classroom setting, if you have ability to influence the entire organization or participate in the conversation with the organization, there's also, I found, lacking a framework or methodology to do it. And that's kind of how I come up with, this rubric. But also, I think I'm preaching to the choir here. I don't think we need to know. I don't need to convince you why we need ethics in education. As you know, there are many use cases out there. There's many issues when we don't think it through. We don't think about ethics. We don't think about how do we make better use of AI tools. These are just some examples of unethical practices. The one that these are all kind of shocking, but I don't know if you guys heard about the Chicago Times make up books to recommend for summer reading. They use AI to come up with books that are non-existent and they publish it. So there are many examples like that out there that would use AI without any guardrails, without any check and balances, without any references to whether the source are legit. So to me, it is becoming obvious that instead of just learning how to judge what's right and wrong, ethics needs to get past that. It needs to be, and it also should not be an afterthought. To me, it's something that we need to integrate as part of the design process for education. So I wanted to move ethics from something we observe or judge into something that we can act on. So this is the AI ethics rubric that I've been working on, so that we can actually use it and do something about it. Again, and the actual document is available on my website. If you click on a source link, which you will have as part of my PowerPoint deck, it has the descriptions and it has like examples and also a way to kind of help you reflect and ask questions. There's some guiding questions to start thinking about. I am not exactly married to the 10 dimensions of focus, but my point here is that ethics is so many things, and sometimes we don't even take the time to unpack like what does it entail, right? I think it's really interesting when I put this out there. People would say, "Oh, it's so good that you thought about environmental impact because we often don't think about that as an ethical dimension." Or people talk about, "Oh, we haven't thought about learner agency as part of ethics." So I'm also looking for feedback from you guys to think about like, um, are these inclusive enough, or are they repetitive? Should we compress it more, or should we expand on it, or are this the right number of dimensions? So I would go through. Okay, great. So yeah, so I'm just gonna go through them briefly and just see what you guys think. And again, feel free to shout out, or if you have any thoughts or examples or anything like that, I would love to hear from you as well. So the first one, purpose and value alignment. I see this so often because I often work on consulting project that I asked to incorporate AI into a workplace. And this is the same with any ed tech before. Because the hype is on the tech, there's almost like no strategy or intention behind the implementation of the technology, in terms of fit, in terms of cultural fit, in terms of organizational fit, in terms of pedagogical fit, in terms of like, is this something that align with what your organization's values and what your strategic goals, but also your pedagogical goals. So to me, that should be the first question to ask before anything else. And yes, to me, this is ethics because we need to think about like, are we imposing a tool that actually doesn't make sense? Is it actually hurting the learning? Is it hurting people? Or is it, is it a barrier? Or is it actually, helping people? Is it actually enhancing the learning, the performance at work, and is it even focusing on human? I know there's a lot of organization now, it's AI first, but and they don't even really define what that means. So I think the first question in this dimension is to ask like, what assumption are we making by selecting or implementing this tool about productivity, about efficiency? Are there any control that bakes into the tool? Okay, yeah, thank you. So somebody commented, very important question and points. I arrived to my destination, but I look forward to watching the recording. Oh, thank you. Yeah, thanks for doing that. Putting that statement out there. So yeah, so that's the first dimension, I think, before anybody or anyone should look at other questions in ethics. So then the second one, it's I call it transparency and explainability. It's whether we even communicate to people these tools are being impacted, and do they understand how this AI tool works, or why it's making, if you're using a recommendation system, like how does it work? How is it impacting them? Are they making even the right recommendations? Did you know they're making recommendations to you? Like sometimes as AI is AI embedding more and more into different tools. Sometimes it's not even obvious that it has an AI function behind it. And I think nowadays the assumption is that any tech would have an AI component now. It's becoming baked into every system, but that doesn't mean we don't explicitly say, hey, this tool is collecting some data about you, it's making some assumptions about you. You should know that what you're seeing may be different than what other people are seeing on the screen, or the dashboard analytics that are that you're seeing. It's making these assumptions about you. So that's an area that I also wanted to focus is like the question to ask. That's just one suggested question, and there are many questions that we can look at. It's what happens if an AI tool makes a decision that you disagree with? Can you trace the logic, but can you also like challenge it? Can you ask a question about it? Do you even know that it's making a decision, right? Oh, I love that people are sharing more. Yeah, feel free to share resources on the chat as well. If you think of anything that's connected to this, like feel free to like share that on the screen. So then the third one, it's about bias and fairness. As you know, these systems are biased because sometimes the data is incomplete, or the data is not representational, or it's making whoever built the system make decisions about what data to use. So that could inadvertently marginalize or exclude a group of people, right? So the question is like, do we have even the ability, or can we check if AI is reinforcing any stereotypes, or I know that's not always possible, but I think it's also like a question to remind ourselves, like, are we able to do it? If we're not able to do it, like, can we take it up to people that are in charge and ask these questions? So somebody just may fit as an example in purpose. Yeah. Thanks for that comment. So this is kind of about just reminding yourself that, we know, don't take all the AI outputs as facts, making sure that we check the sources, making sure that we understand that's always going to be mistakes, and we need to ask questions about that. So then moving on to the next one, it's about data ethics and privacy. I kind of struggle with should we, because it kind of, touch on fairness and biases, but I think data governance, it's something, or data handling practices, it is something, it's important enough to kind of, talk about as a specific dimension. So I wanted to know what you guys think about it. Is it something we should highlight, or should I fold that into one of the other dimensions as well? This is also to remind ourselves to think about in terms of collecting data. Are we collecting everything? Are we collecting things that we don't need, or are we intentional in collecting just what we need? And are the data being protected? And are they ever being deleted or archived? What is the process like? So again, it links back to transparency as well, in terms of like, do people know the data? Are the data being protected? You talk to, is that being communicated to them? Are they, do they have a way to anonymize the data that's about them? So that's the dimension on that. Moving on is accountability and oversight.
Stella,
So,
can I ask
yeah.
a question? It sounded like you wanted sort of feedback as you go.
Yes.
So one of the things that I've struggled to kind of separate in my mind and decided ultimately to sort of conjoin them is data privacy versus plagiarism. I know that sounds like an odd kind of combination, but essentially if you have the ability to govern your own data, then you have the right to have it not leak on the internet and, you know, kind of be exposed and
Right.
monetized, and the ways we think about like social media. But in the age of LLMs, that might also extend to the right not to have these models be trained on your data. Right. So this
That's
is really
right. Yeah.
focusing on authors and artists and musicians. And I'm not sure if other people or you see that connection as part of data governance and rights.
No?
This is George. I agree with John and also Stella. I'm thinking that these areas do overlap.
Yeah.
But it's, excuse me, very good to distinguish between them, because I think the different approaches maybe in different disciplines allow people better access. And I'm talking, you know, the higher education world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, because in one discipline or field, you might be more concerned with the humans or social impact side, and in another discipline or major, you might be interested in some other aspect, but they can kind of come to this, you know, maybe the same conclusion or reach some common ground as, hey, there, you know, is an ethical framework we can use to get at potential problems. And that area of bias versus privacy versus, you know, the ownership or, you know, plagiarism side that John referred to, they overlap in different ways. The business people may have a different take on it than the creatives.
Yeah.
And so maybe those different lenses are very helpful.
Yeah, I struggle with, like, I don't want it to overrun people either, or I don't want it to be too repetitive, but also at the same time, like I help companies to write policies on AI, and I find it helpful to have the categories spell out more clearly, because then like accountability, and oversight often translates into governance practices, or like what kind of governance they need to establish. But I agree with you both. Like John, I also, you know, think about, yeah, it's different with AI, is that you don't always have control, right, with the data that's being used or collected, or even, you know, to know, you know, if that's even happening. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a clear answer. That's why the more conversation we have, it kind of help to think about, maybe we could even cut and dice it in different way. And again, like the 10 dimension, it's not meant to be like used in a comprehensive kind of way. It's really for people like here. It's a reminder that you know, ethics, you know, encompasses many things, and don't just think about biases. Don't only think about data privacy, because sometimes I talk to people about ethics and they seem to only think about one or two things, instead of like thinking, you know, like you saying, like plagiarism is a thing, copyright is a thing, also. So how can we be, you know, mindful that there's all sorts of issues out there that falls under the ethical umbrella, and not kind of forget about it? So does it make sense?
I mean, that
Is
makes
it-
sense to me, Stella. I like your idea that, you know, people forget the various ethical fronts, you know, on which these battles are taking place. And in choosing to sort of lump data governance and privacy and plagiarism together, I'm kind of taking a particular political angle, which is that I don't want to see the sort of balkanization of all of these different communities where, you know, maybe the New York Times cuts a deal with OpenAI about their access to their articles and getting paid for them, but the average, you know, Medium or Substack user or blog user doesn't get paid.
Don't have that.
Same with music and art, and you know, you can imagine that, like, essentially you kind of carve up the internet into the haves and have-nots. Framing it as a larger issue of data governance means that we have to think about like everybody's data and what rights they might have.
Yeah, again, I think the first step for me, it's to kind of raise awareness to, like, hey, these are issues that we need to think about. Like, don't implement AI tools without thinking all these aspects. And sometimes I understand, just time pressure or this other factors that you're not in control of, and you're told to implement this thing, or Copilot just happen to be the AI tool of choice because your organization already have Microsoft everything, right? So sometimes you don't have a choice, but within what you can do, can we even look at these issues and push back or ask questions, or sometimes to challenge the vendors a little bit, which brings me back to the next couple ones that I think it's kind of hopefully give us back a little bit more control. This I find it so interesting because we talk about learning agency and consent way before AI arrives. But I think AI just makes it worse now, or makes it harder to figure it out, because a lot of times you don't get explicit consent about how AI is being used and how it makes decisions for you. And I don't see a lot of AI tools that give you the options to opt out, or to edit or adjust your preferences or override decisions. I see a lot of the LLMs like ChatGPT. Now you can kind of give it feedback and say, don't ever use this tone to me, or I don't want you to mention, learning style as a thing. Please get rid of that in your output. So you can, to an extent now, but again, it needs to be an intentional effort. And also, is there any implicit pressures to use the tools? Like, is it something not just as learners, but as educators? Like, do we feel like, we don't have any control over what we do and use? So George has a comment. We're seeking agency consent in retrospect. Oh, that's interesting. Did you want to share more about that, George?
I think just that it's difficult, as my students arrive next week, so
Yeah.
I once again, right, trying to catch up with all the things that happened since spring in terms of AI.
Yeah, I know.
Of course, right? But meanwhile, it's already released on our campuses, and
Right.
and so it's been there, a couple of years. But in terms of the impact, now it's expanding. It went from being the freebie that all our US students got in April and May, chat GPT for everyone, that kind of thing.
So can we seek agency and consent in retrospect?
Can we?
Yeah.
Once it's out,
Yeah.
and once our I'm going to say our senior admins and executives are opting in, right? Everybody is kind of opted in, and you can individually say no, or individually, I'm going to say not. You can set your policy in your classrooms on my campus, for example, because we don't have a policy that says like everyone must use it.
Yeah.
One of the other Cal State campuses, there was actually an announcement to students that it was part of the university infrastructure, which is basically the university saying all the students are, can go ahead and use this, right?
Yeah.
Because it was brought in a different way. So I think right now it's, kind of organization by organization.
Yeah.
That common ground maybe that John referred to in terms of overall governance is not really there yet. Meanwhile, the tools continue to be released in
Yeah.
different ways, and sometimes given away and sometimes sold by the vendors, right? I guess they say the first one is always free, right?
Yeah, it
they need to
concerns
make,
me.
and then the vendors still need to make money, so they're figuring that out.
Yeah, it concerns me too. It's very vendor driven as well, right? So of course they wanted to sell you more tools, and hence my question about the implicit pressure to use AI. Is this something we can even say no, or can we minimize it, or can we evaluate case by case, because not everything needs to be AI, and so it links to the bigger question as well. But I just want to kind of highlight there's a need to have like agency and consent. But it's interesting about the retrospective component, because you're right, like these tools been around for a couple of years at least. So can we go back and adjust that, and can we add that opt-out option later on? So I don't know what you guys think about this. I kind of not sure if I should add Gen AI as a specific dimension, but this is where I wanted to capture like what John mentioned about the plagiarism, and also like copyright issues, and also in terms of should we clarify what kind of citation standard, or what kind of resource references, and also in terms of AI human collaboration. I want to share with you, I was using ChatGPT to say, hey, give me some job data that are being, jobs and tasks that are being displaced by AI locally in my city, in Calgary. It make up references for me. And this is with ChatGPT 4.0, and then when I push back and I say, well, these things are fake, and it would give me real references. But then sometimes it's also like, give me real references, but not in my city. But it's say, in Calgary, but when you click the link, it's actually somewhere else. So I want to capture, like, in terms of Gen AI, kind of opens up a whole other ethical, array of issues, or should we kind of fold this back into everything else that we talk about as ethical issues? What do you guys think about, in terms of having to highlight Gen AI specific use cases for ethics? Although nowadays, I think there's a lot more talk on agentic AI, which again creates other sets of ethical issues. Some of them are new, some of them are different, some of them are kind of the same. So what's your take? Any thoughts? Want to share, or typed it in the chat? Do you guys find Gen AI to kind of give you different sets of problems or issues that you need to think it through and talk it through with your students, or did you kind of fold it into the larger AI conversation, like predictive AI?
I think for me it's unique, but I would I'm in my mind I try to draw a line between the top half of your paragraph and the second. In this, the bottom half, fact checking, citation, clarifying when you use it. That's something that's really has to do with like inference time use by students. Like I'm writing an essay and I'm using AI, right? And what's the ethical boundaries of that? And the things on the top are complicated because although it might impact some students, it really is much more in terms of society's focus on like people at large, like artists whose work is being taken and so forth. And it focuses more on the training side than the inference side. So to me, I kind of imagine talking to students about the top stuff separately from talking to them about the bottom stuff.
That's good feedback. So the reason I mentioned like copyright and accuracy and creativity for learning professionals is I also deal with learning professionals that have to create learning content, like online courses, and they struggle with creating content now. There's so many e-learning, blended learning authoring tools that have AI built in that give you AI generated imageries. It gives you AI generated videos that they can use in putting together e-learning. So that's why I kind of put it there as, and they also have raised questions about, well, should we use AI generated imageries to put into e-learning courses? It's becoming an accepted practice. I recently did a course with again with another European innovation in tech on teaching teachers in Europe on AI, and I was just responsible for creating the content, but they said, oh, if you can suggest some imageries, it will be great. And we use AI generated imageries. But there's no really attribution other than one sentence to say generated by Leonardo.ai or generated by Stable Diffusion, right? So in terms of attribution, in terms of is it even ethical to use these kind of imageries to a course that they are putting out there? Like in this instance, they're not selling the course, but if they're selling it, then you're essentially also using other people's artworks to make a profit. So that's kind of way I was thinking in terms of copyright and creativity and accuracy and authorship and all that stuff. So, but I take your point. I think, John, it makes sense to kind of separate the top and the bottom half of the paragraph to kind of maybe even just take the bottom half, because it might not even be, it should be a bigger question than just ethical practices as well. I think it needs to fall into more general practice. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? Or should we move on to the next one? So this one, I'm not sure how many of you have influence on procurement decision when it comes to like what kind of AI to buy and what kind of AI to build, what kind of AI to develop. But this is something I have to deal with all the time. As you know, all the AI vendors are driving this conversation. They are pushing schools, universities, workplaces to buy more AI tools. And if you are part of the procurement process, if you are able to be part of the evaluation team, I think it's good to also push back and ask questions, and to also look at like, do they have any policies on ethics or anything to do with data governance, and not just what they currently do, but is it also built into the roadmap? Are they developing more of that? And it's just to make sure that we engage in that conversation with vendors, because they often don't mention that, or that's often not their priority. As I think George mentioned, they just try to sell you more tools, and they try to get you use them and make a profit out of it. So I put it here because it is an area that often get overlooked. Did you guys have any experience with that, or what's your take? What's your experience in terms of working with AI vendors or selecting them? Or did you feel like you don't have any control? No? Oh, you're on mute.
In my university, we went through a process of kind of coming up with ethical frameworks for deciding vendors, and then this new, CIO came in and sort of decided himself what everyone should have.
Oh,
kind of
okay.
highlighted the importance of this slide, not just that you look for vendors that have ethical practices, if there are any in the AI space, but also that there's buy-in and process for everybody who's involved and impacted.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you don't have any control, right? Like you get a CIO or you get an executive just decided, or they already had relationship with the vendor and they cut them a deal and then they just implement it. And also examples that I see, it's so many organizations like, oh, we're Google shop or we're Microsoft shop, and so we are only going to use Gemini, or only using notebook LM, and we only use Copilot. And that's the end of the discussion, right? But when we can, I think if we are in a position to influence, I think that's an area that we need to definitely focus on. And the last two, inclusive AI design. This, of course, goes without saying with not just AI tool, but anything else, to kind of consider, is the tool inclusive in terms of, languages, abilities, context, culture. So it's just to remind us to test for accessibility and relevance, and also to kind of advocate for anything that's left out, anything that's not being represented. So, and I just want to finish with the last one, and we can kind of open more conversations up. So the last one, it's interesting. It seems to really hit. It really hit a nerve, I think, recently with environmental impact. It's that to acknowledge the fact that like using AI tools have an opportunity cost, like it has other costs. It's using up resources, it's taking up a lot of power. And we also wanted to, ask questions like, well, is it necessary to use this tool? Like, do we have better practices in reducing the environmental harm? What kind of energy does this tool demand? So it's just a question to ask, and just again to be mindful of sometimes you think about technology happens in the cloud. It doesn't feel very tangible or physical, but it does have a physical impact. And so and I think John has some good resources to share as well that I had also helped promote. So John, you want to share a little bit more about your take on that, or anybody else wanted to? Oh, thanks. You already posted that on your chat, but feel free to, talk more about that.
I'm very interested to people who have other resources. What I did is I was just very frustrated by apples to oranges comparisons online with, half the internet saying it's the end of the world and the other half saying it's no big deal. And so I just did research and created this kind of calculator that compares normal digital tasks like watching, Netflix or participating in Zoom or scrolling TikTok to AI tasks like generating a paragraph or video, whatever. And so I linked to the app that's there, as well as a list of sources and calculations. And I think something we can do with our students is I have a number of suggested exercises to use the calculator for, but you can also have them dig into the sources and really look at primary materials and realize how little transparency there is from the industry on this topic.
Yeah.
But I would love to hear more. I'm always on the lookout for more resources and more studies and so forth, because I'm trying to keep the numbers as up to date as possible given the uncertainty in the field.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are you gonna add more examples in your calculator? Because I was like playing with that and I was like, oh, I want more examples.
So I've kind of held the line so far. I'm probably going to break on non-digital activities. So the thing that AI advocates often want me to include is things like eating a hamburger or flying a plane, and I think I probably will, but it's a little hard to compare. The short version is those are vastly more energy and sort of climate footprints than AI currently does. I calculated that a one-way flight for one passenger from LA to New York is the same as writing 300 books, zero shot with ChatGPT. Or let's say that you spend 10 different prompts to write your books, and you sort of get 10 shots at revising each of them. Then that's like it's like 10 books. So 10 mediocre books written with ChatGPT is the equivalent of one flight. So I think an important thing that I try to bear in mind though is in the conversation that's I've been having with Rebecca Yeager, who's in some of our groups that we like, the Google AI and education group and so forth. She talks about this replacement lens, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but the idea is you can't just compare AI to something people would already do. You have to compare it to something they would do instead. So if someone's going to go ahead and eat a hamburger, adding an AI task to that does increase the environmental impact, unless you assume they're not going to eat a hamburger if they're making AI. So
you have to eat anyway.
So it's a little tricky. That's one reason I've been a little hesitant to add the non-digital activities. But I would love to hear, Stella, what other tasks and kind of ideas do you have to add?
Well, one thing I was gonna say is, can you add more non-US examples? So then because I was reading, I was like, oh, I think you say something about something in Idaho or something, and I was like, or equivalent of someplace, and I was like, oh, that's US, right? Or when you say LA to New York, I was like, can you also give a flight from New Delhi to Beijing? Or some other destination.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, I have lots of thoughts on that, but we can chat offline. And I've been collecting conversations and what people have said. So happy to chat with you, John, after the session. And I think George has a comment about building or overbuilding data center in low income areas. Can you tell us more about that, George? I'm not even aware of that. Like, where are these places?
Yeah, I don't haven't been homed in on much on this one, paying a lot of attention to it because I'm in a very privileged region. I'm on the central coast of California, where we
Nice.
just had the, one of the largest automobile car shows ever, right, at our Pebble Beach area, which is not where I live, but I don't live too far from it. And so even in, my not really high income area, I'm very near this very privileged area, and it kind of overtakes the entire tourism industry here for, this period of the year. Among, and there are other events too, but that's the big one. And so what I'm looking at is, though, there are regions, and here it's going to be kind of US centric, but I'm thinking of particular low income regions and states, Tennessee and others, where they're very concerned about the proliferation of data centers. And since they're specifically about, and they're citing AI as the reason for the data centers, right? And that's why there's a link there. If it was just about computing power in general, I might not have picked up on it as an AI issue. But they're not saying that. They're saying, yeah, it's Sam Altman needs more data centers, right? That's how it's being put across to us. And then it's a matter of where do you build them? Do you build them near Pebble Beach? No, you don't. You build them maybe where you've already got some environmental problems. Maybe you build them along our what in the US we call Cancer Alley, which is expanding, from Louisiana up, which is one of our deep South states, up through some of our still south of the Mason-Dixon line states, but it's an expanding region. And you look at health problems that we can argue about speaking of data collection, we can argue about, can you even prove that there is a health impact to these? Only if you study it, and if we don't do enough research to determine if there's a problem, then I guess, officially there's no problem. But these are already in some very, I'm going to say, very low income, economically distressed areas, and more data centers are coming. And I know that I want to say something's come up in the UK as well, and I can't place that. Maybe someone else who's on in the session here can come up with some examples in other regions. UK comes to mind, but I can't be more specific on that.
Yeah, I was going to recommend a book called Atlas of AI. I don't know if anyone read it, by Kate Crawford. And in the book, she talks about mining lithium. It's also in, countries that are poor and, needed the money, but it's also exploiting the natural resources, whereby lithium is mined to death. And so it's interesting to, look, she talks a lot about environmental impact, but also like human exploitation and other things as well. So for any of us that wanted to learn more about that, I think it's really well researched. And she talks about other things as well on AI, but a lot of ethical concerns that are covered in that book. So I don't know, have any of you heard of it or read it or already? Yeah, David, it's nodding. So yeah, I really like that. Anyway, so just to sum up, I also kind of worked on some sort of maturity level mapping, or just to help. Again, this is kind of not, instead of a checklist, it's more like a reflection tool to see where your organization or your team or your department is at in terms of these ethical practices. It's not to judge, but it's just also, taking a pulse check, but also like, if you're aspiring to get to the next level, these are some ideas or examples to follow. So I have that for all the dimensions in terms of the 3 levels. It's in my website. Feel free to download it, use it, give me some feedback, see what you think about it. So I also have a companion guide that gives you more examples and questions in terms of, thinking through AI. And so is it something just toward the end of the conversation or the actual formal presentation part of it? So let's open up for more discussions. Anything that you guys been thinking about, anything you guys been, trying to practice from an ethical perspective in terms of AI? Love to hear your thoughts. Yeah, at list of AIs. Yeah, oh, you're welcome. And please connect with me. Please write to me or message me, or if you want to have a follow-up conversation, always happy to hear. So yeah, so any other things that's concerns of yours, anything you've been working on, anything you want to talk to students about, like, I'd love to hear more. And also, like, do you think, did you find this useful? Is it something you would use? Is it something you can, you can apply? What's missing? If anybody's working on anything similar, I'd love to hear about it too. Yeah, John, I think that's a good comment about doesn't have a huge global impact, but localized impact. Yeah. Yeah, all true, all true.
I also like, Stella, the way that your
Yeah.
framework is easily extended to non-AI things. I think one of the things I've really learned about AI that I find valuable about it is that by focusing our attention onto it, we can become more conscious of other things we take for granted that have impacts that are, or ethical questions, right?
Yeah, and it's
So,
kind of an extension of work that I've done throughout the years where like I had to deal with, different phases of ed tech, and we basically gone through the same questions, like in terms of, for example, learning agencies and consent. That's not new. It's not
right.
AI, but it's or data governance. It's not AI specific, but it just kind of, I think AI magnifies or empathizes the need to focus on these issues right now. Because it's happening so quickly. There's so many AI tools. It's coming at us at a speed and at a volume that perhaps we haven't seen before. So I think in a way it kind of forces us to look at things again that perhaps we haven't quite finished the conversation or haven't looked at it more thoroughly from before.
Right. As an example, people talked in this chat about it's unclear where the money's being made in AI right now, right? Like companies like OpenAI are kind of like bleeding cash, getting investment on the far side. But if you look at the boom in data centers right now, only about 15% of those is used for AI. Now that figure will probably grow. But you have basically companies that are not making money on AI pushing for data centers that won't even use a lot of their resources toward AI. So what's going on there? Well, if you look at what these companies are, places like Google and Meta and so forth, they're making money off of ads due to processing your data for social media algorithms. And that's, besides crypto, that's where most of the data center usage is. So AI is sort of being waved as a flag to justify these build outs of systems that may not even have to do with AI, at least directly. So that goes back to your point, Stella, of some of these older technologies, the things we didn't get ahead of ethically when they first emerged, like social media, may be revealed by pulling back the curtain on AI.
Yeah, I think it's always like a continuum of conversation, right? Like even academic integrity. I mean, we should talk about this a long time ago. It's not just AI specific, but I think AI kind of forces us to talk about it now because it really leaves us no choice to really face it square on. I don't want to forget George has a comment about current labor workplace impact on learning professionals, since we all get to implement AI systems at ground level while still doing our existing jobs. Is this speaking from personal experience, George? Tell us more about it.
I think this is for everybody.
Yeah.
If you're not already, for example, and actually this isn't I'm not sure it's a great example because CS computer science has their own problems. And possibly an expanding labor market problem, right? As there are massive layoffs happening with some of the companies now. We're concerned about entry-level jobs for our undergrads anyway. So it's not, and that's across the board. But computer science, business, and so on, where maybe there's an issue for our graduating students. But I'm really talking about the issue for us as the faculty and staff of universities. And so I'm thinking this must apply in other workplaces as well, where
100%.
Where our job descriptions are have not changed. We still have classes to teach. We still have incoming students. We still have the subjects that we were hired to teach about, the in our majors and disciplines, and in our different departments. And the staff had jobs that they were hired to do. And now on top of that, we also need to be fluent enough with AI tools to decide whether to use them or how to use them in our classes, and how to ask our students and our co-workers, our colleagues, to use them as well. So we have to do all this, but we're not necessarily, I'm going to say, compensated for the time and effort that goes into it.
Or getting support or training.
And yes, I think the campuses that I know of are each trying to provide some of this professional support in terms of professional development and so on. But it's lagging, the reality of the technology that's coming at us. Plus, math, humanities, social science, all of this has to be, taught with or without AI. And regardless of how well we are learning it as individual faculty and staff.
Well, what I see out there in the workplace is even worse because there's also budget cut. So we're also dealing with doing more with less. And at the same time, people's jobs are being threatened because they think that, and they're not wrong. I mean, part of the job tasks are being displaced or replaced, but at the same time, they are told to be implementing AI to support their workflow. But then some of that, some of their tasks is being taken away by AI at the same time, and then they have less money to do things that they still have to run, the same amount of work. So I think it's even worse in workplace learning. I don't know what's
Stella. Since you do work outside of academia, right? It sounds like you're consulting with businesses or other organizations.
Yeah.
Is there something, lessons that we might take back to our students, those of us who are kind of head down in our campuses? So it might be something like, hey, out in the real world, it's like this, or this, here's an example of an anecdote that someone got AI right or wrong from the real world. Because I think students really appreciate when they feel like they're not in an ivory tower.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot too, to kind of, what I can do. Like maybe I'll start writing some posts or give some talks about that. But something you're interested in, or anybody interested in, thinking it through or collaborate on, I'd be happy to do that because I do see that it's the reality out there, and I think students need to know about it because it's happening to it's not just learning professionals. I think, all professionals at workplace right now, it's facing very similar reality. It's that they're told to use AI tools, they're told to implement them, but at the same time, they are also facing more limitations and challenges, and also a bit of an existential crisis going on. So.
And you're talking about outside of academia as well,
Yeah,
like that
correct.
people who are working in industry
Yeah,
or
yeah.
freelance creatives, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's the same time, if you're managers or above, you're also under a lot of pressure to implement AI, because if you're hiring people, the new hires also have expectation that you'll be using these tools, right? So as at an organization, at a management level, they also are grappling with like, how can we attract and keep talent so they're not, they don't leave because we're not training them properly on AI, or they don't come to work with us because we don't provide the right tools. So I know we're at the top of the hour. I don't want to keep people from going off to enjoy their days or evenings, so I would stop here. Happy to linger around for a few minutes if people want to talk, but I just want to make sure that we end the session on time.
Thank you so much, Stella.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing.